Hello, and welcome to this special Foster Care Institute online training webinar in partnership today with the Fostering Circle. I'm your host, Dr. John DeGarmo, the founder and director of the Foster Care Institute. I am also a speaker, a trainer, an author, and perhaps most importantly, a foster and adoptive parent myself. If you're not familiar with my story, I've been a foster parent to over 60 plus children through my home for almost 2 decades. I have had as many as 11 children in my house at the same time, so I recognize truly the challenges that it brings to a marriage. I've had the blessing and joy of adopting 3 children from foster care as well. Our goal during this webinar is to increase the awareness and the realities of feeling and trauma and stress that marriages can suffer while foster parenting. We're also going to increase your awareness of the challenges and stress it impacts upon a marriage and gain an understanding of how to develop and implement strategies designed to aid with these challenges. So why do we foster? For each of us, we all have our own particular different reasons. For some, it's a call to action. For some, we feel like we're giving back. For some, it's issues of faith. For others, we may be fostering a child of ours that is from a relative, a kinship, if you will. For others, we simply feel the need to care for children in our own community. According to a study by the Casey Family Program Study in 2011, about 48% of children and youth in foster care have emotional or behavioral problems, and 63% are victims of neglect. That is of about 500,000 children in the foster care system in the United States. My friend, I'm here to tell you that I believe this study is not accurate. I believe that the percentage of children and youth in foster care who have emotional behavioral problems is closer to 100%. And perhaps you might agree with me as well. Does this affect a marriage? It truly does. But in order for us to look at how a marriage may struggle, we need to look at very briefly about the experiences that might bring a child into foster care to begin with. And you're probably very familiar with this, so we'll be very quick through this. We go into much greater detail at the Foster Care Institute, but for today's purposes, we're just going to briefly touch upon this. Children may be placed into foster care for examples of prolonged separation, perhaps the death of a family member, various forms of abuse, and if you've read several of my books, you know I've experienced all of that in my own home. They may witness abuse to others. Indeed, 5 million children in the United States alone every year either witness or experience domestic abuse or domestic violence in their own homes. For some children, they may end up in foster care because they have been homeless. For others, it may be drugs or alcohol in the family. It may be neglect, abandonment, or imprisonment of a family member. Now, the life of a foster parent is truly a very different lifestyle. We, as foster parents, live a very different lifestyle than your friends or your family members or those you go to work with or church with. Indeed, your friends and family members and those at work and those at church will never truly appreciate or understand what you do as a foster parent. No one understands a foster parent like another foster parent. As foster parents, we invest all of our time. It is a 365-day job a year, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day when we care for children with anxieties in our home and within our family. We invest ourselves emotionally. If you are like me, you feel the pain these children are going through. When you hear their story, your heart is tugged, and so you invest yourselves emotionally. We invest ourselves physically, whether it's going to visitations or doctor's appointments or schools or court cases, whether it is bending down to pick up these children or diaper changing, whatever it might be. We invest ourselves physically. Indeed, we invest our entire life as a foster parent. It is a different lifestyle. My friend, feelings of grief and loss are very, very normal for foster parents. It is important to remember that you are not in charge of the situation. If a child is removed from your home, Yes, that place great stress upon your family, and we'll look upon that shortly, and stress upon your marriage, and we'll look upon that shortly. But you must remember this: it is often a decision made by the courts. One thing that affects marriages is secondary traumatic stress, also known as compassion fatigue. And we have a whole webinar devoted to it at the Foster Care Institute. According to Dr. Charles Figley, the natural consequent behaviors resulting from knowledge about a traumatizing event experienced by a significant other. It is the stress resulting from helping or wanting to help a traumatized or suffering person. Symptoms of compassion fatigue or secondary traumatic stress are very, very similar to PTSD or post traumatic stress disorder. The difference, though, is the experience. Very briefly, reasons for secondary traumatic stress include empathy. We may over empathize or over identify with children, placing ourselves at risk of internalizing the problem, which is what I do. Lack of recovery time. Listening to and living with the horror stories over and over and over in your home can have a negative effect. Maybe your own pain or your own personal trauma might be unresolved and may surface again through the childhood's experience. You may also internalize the child's trauma. Symptoms of these include anger or anxiety, deep sadness, prolonged grief, cynicism, irritability, mood swings, self isolation, backaches, exhaustion, headaches, stomach aches, and weariness. Something that I have experienced myself: weariness. Caring for over 60 children through my home over 20 years and up to 11 at a time, yes, I have grown weary at times. Do all of these symptoms affect your marriage? Absolutely. Absolutely. Perhaps the most popular and requested session or seminar that I conduct across the United States and across the globe is that of grief and loss for foster parents. When a child leaves our home, we grieve the loss of the child. Our hearts break because we've given that child what the child needs the most: unconditional love. The child needs us to love them so much so that when they do leave, for whatever reason it might be, yes, our hearts break for these children. Yes, it feels like we're losing a member of our own family or perhaps our own child. And yes, we do grieve. Does this affect a marriage? Absolutely. When a child is placed in your home beforehand, when you get that phone call, you need to ask yourself a few questions in order to protect your marriage. How will this affect your family? How will this placement affect your marriage? Are you both healthy mentally, physically, and emotionally for this next placement? Are you unified in the decision to foster? Do you both feel that this is the time to have a new child placed in your home? Because if you feel differently, if one person is in favor of the new placement and another person is against it, you cannot take that child into your home because you may experience resentment of some sort. Now, let's look at the challenges to your marriage while foster parenting, and there are many challenges to be sure. To begin with, your marriage can be neglected as you care for these children in your home 24 hours a day. Children who demand all of your attention and all of your time and all of your care and all of your heart. Your marriage can be neglected. Your own needs can be ignored. Now, to be honest, we know that what society believes is false. Many in society believe that foster parents are in it for the money, and we know that is not true. Indeed, the opposite is a fact. We feel pain sometimes financially, right? The constraints of finances as you provide the things that children need in foster care. If you are like me, you get them every single opportunity to lead a normal lifestyle, whether that is dance lessons or being in the marching band, singing in the choir, going to summer camp, getting a brand new bike, whatever it might be. Yes, the constraint of finances can be difficult for a marriage. And then, of course, there's that lack of sleep. That lack of sleep when you're exhausted all the time. Yes, that affects your marriage. There may be the disagreement of discipline between you and your partner, you and your spouse. Working with biological parents can truly be stressful at times, and that stress can add an additional pressure upon your marriage. And look at that t-shirt there. I love that t-shirt. The little child is wearing there. The baby says, "I see tired parents." Oh my goodness, the needs of the children can be exhausting. Then there are the disagreements between married couples. Every single marriage has their disagreements of some sort. But when you're bringing children with anxiety into your home, sometimes those disagreements can be amplified due to the stress that you're both feeling. Perhaps you've experienced this, a child manipulating you against your spouse or partner in some fashion. And as we noted earlier, if you're both not on board to having a child placed in your home at the same time, maybe one of you needs a break. Maybe one of you is grieving the last placement. Maybe one of you is having a hard time or is not feeling so well. You can't have a child placed in your home. If you push towards it, then there may be resentment of the child in your home. Resentment about the child's birth parents, the resentment towards a child welfare agency, resentment towards a caseworker, resentment towards foster care in general, even resentment perhaps towards you. And then, as I've seen so much across the nation and across the globe, as I work with foster parents at the Foster Care Institute at sessions, the grief that foster parents experience when they say goodbye to a child. And if you've seen my TED Talk, then you know I have experienced that grief as well. I've become an emotional cripple, emotional cripple, so to speak, is my experience as a foster parent. So, how do you protect your marriage? We've seen briefly here the challenges that marriages experience. And we go into much greater detail on this at the Foster Care Institute. But how do you protect your marriage? Let's look at that briefly here. First of all, you have to have a commitment from your family. Both you and your spouse, you and your partner must be in full agreement before having another child placed in your home. If you have children of your own, they must be in agreement as well. They must be committed to that as well. Hey, I have 6 children, as you saw in the picture earlier. When a child is placed in my home, my wife and I often depend upon our own children to help out, whether it is with helping with the dishes, doing laundry, taking the garbage out, maybe feeding a small baby with a bottle, maybe changing a diaper, or playing, or just reading a story to one of the kids. Yes, we depend upon our own children, and so we all must be committed. And even if our kids are saying, "Mom, Dad, we need a break," then you need to take a break. Now, this might be tough. Time for your marriage. My wife and I went through an experience where we had at least one child placed in our home for up to 5 years. We went 5 years in a row, nonstop, without a break. When one child would leave, another child would be placed in either that day or within 24 hours. No exaggeration. Was it tough? Yes, it was. Yes, it was tough for our marriage. Indeed, for a long time, we averaged 9 children in foster care in our home. Now, you might say, Dr. John, how many children can be placed in your home at one time? Does your state not have regulations and restrictions? Yes. Yes. But if you've read my books, you know that the area that I live in the country, there's such a shortage of foster parents that my wife and I have signed waivers in times of emergencies because there's no other place for these children. Does it affect our marriage? Yes, it absolutely does. As I noted earlier, when you're giving all of your time, all of your attention, you are giving all of your emotion and your heart and your love to these children in your home who are suffering with anxiety, suffering from challenges, suffering from emotions that are overwhelming them. It leaves little time for your marriage. You have to give time for your marriage. You have to carve out time, whether it's 5 minutes a day over a cup of coffee, whether it's getting up early in the morning and having a time of prayer, whether it's taking time in the afternoon to go for a short walk, whether it's spending a little bit of time at night just exchanging what went through the day. You have to give time for your marriage, and that includes date time. Once a month, you and your partner, you and your spouse need to have that time together. Because at the end of the day, When you're done foster parenting, when all the children have left your home, you do not want to look across the table to a stranger, to a person you've not stayed connected to. So make sure that your marriage is a priority. Not only do you have to give time for your marriage, you also have to give time for yourself. Hey, your partner, your spouse fell in love with you for a reason because they like who you are and all that makes up you. So you don't want to lose yourself. So give time for yourself. You have to have that little bit of me time. Again, whether it's getting up in the morning and having a bit of time for yourself, whether it's going for a walk, whether it's shutting yourself in the closet for a couple minutes a day and just having a little bit of alone time. Whether it's going shopping once a week by yourself or out to see a movie or going in the garden, which is what I like to do. I like to go in the garden and I like to garden. And I try to do that often. It gives me time to reflect, a little bit of quiet time. If you're a person of faith, prayer is a time that can help your marriage as well. Prayer and reflection are things that foster parents across the country and across the globe often do. They have the time of meditation, of reflection, of prayer together. It helps to strengthen their marriage and bring the two of them together. Perhaps that is you and your spouse. Now, to be sure, you do not want to look like that picture there. You do not want to have that picture of the two of you in your home like this. You must communicate together. When one person is exhausted, when one person is overwhelmed, when one person is depressed or frustrated with the system or whatever it might be, you have to share that with your spouse. Yes, foster parenting is tough. Yes, there are those times when you'll be frustrated with the system, times you may be angry, times you may be just sad, brokenhearted, concerned, confused. Share that with your spouse. Communication is essential. As we discussed earlier, sometimes those children will try to separate you. You need to make sure you work together to be in agreement. An agreement in regards to how you discipline a child, agreement on how you raise a child, agreement on your choice of menus, your choice of everything. You need to work together. This is not something that comes naturally to marriages. You have to learn how to be in agreement with each other. And this is something you have to practice, particularly when there are children in your home who are straining you emotionally and wearing you out. You have to put forth effort to be in agreement with your spouse. Again, we go into great detail on this in the book, The Foster Care Survival Guide, and the whole chapter about marriage. And as we just noted, again, there are those times where the children in your home will work together. They will work if there's two or more, or maybe just one child. They will work to separate the two of you. They will divide the two of you. They will find some avenue to make the two of you disagree, to separate the two of you, and manipulate you if they will. Do not let the children do that. You have to be on the same page, you and your spouse, again, in agreement. If one foster parent feels this is the way to discipline a child and another foster parent feels opposite, that can cause a strain in your marriage. Make sure you're on the same page. Do not let these children manipulate the two of you. When I first started fostering, I recognized almost 20 years ago there's not many resources out there for foster parents, not many books, not many online resources. That's why I created a number of books and a number of resources at the Foster Care Institute. Whether you use those or other services online, make sure that when you need questions answered, when you need help, simply go online and find the help that you need. Perhaps one of the most important things my caseworker did for me almost 20 years ago was connect my wife and I to a foster parent support group. I love foster parent support groups. Indeed, as I travel the nation, I help foster care parents set up their own support group if they do not have one in the area. As I noted earlier, no one understands a foster parent like another foster parent. So it's important that you surround yourself with people who understand what you're going through so you can vent, so you can cry, so you can laugh, so you can share those stories, and most importantly, learn and lean from each other and upon each other. If you do not have a local foster parent support group, ask your agency to help you set one up, or perhaps start or join a state association, or maybe even the National Foster Parent Association, the NFPA. But support groups are essential not only for your well-being personally, but also for your marriage as well. Now, to be sure, this is hard for foster parents, and it's hard for me sometimes. Learning to say no. When that phone call comes and there's another child who needs to have a home, sometimes you need to say no. There are those times when you need to circle the wagon, so to speak, and focus upon your own self, your own children, your own family, your own marriage. It is okay to give yourself a break. When you say no to one child, you are saying yes to another because you're recharging those batteries, so to speak. You're giving yourself some time off so you can rejuvenate, so you can become refreshed, so you can help yourself and heal yourself. Because if you continue to say yes to every single child, you will burn out. You will experience compassion fatigue. You will become so exhausted and so worn out, not only will you not be able to help yourself, you will not be able to help the child, and you certainly will not be able to help your marriage. I have heard from foster parents across the nation and across the globe that so many times they either do not know about respite care or they feel guilty about taking respite care. If you're not familiar with what respite care is, we have a whole webinar on at the Foster Care Institute. Respite care is a fantastic opportunity for you as a foster parent to take a little bit of time off. Maybe go away with your spouse or partner for a weekend. Maybe to spend a little bit of time with your family for a weekend or for a short amount of time. Again, this allows you to recharge those batteries, so to speak, for a short amount of time. So when you do return to that child that's with anxiety and needs you, you are in a better place to care for that child. It's a win-win scenario for everybody involved. And if you're not familiar with respite care, again, check out the Foster Care Institute training webinar on it and ask your local foster care agency that you work with about respite care for you. My friend, if we do not care for ourselves, we do not care for our marriage, we can't care for these children. If you're like me, the children placed in my home, however exhausting it might be, are truly a gift to me. These children are a gift from the heart. Now, at the Foster Care Institute, we have over 50 hours of at-home online training webinars for you, where you can get unlimited access for 12 months to over 50 hours of online training webinars, certificates, and CEUs. It is an incredible value for you at the Foster Care Institute, and I encourage you to do it because not only do you get all the resources and information and training you need 24 hours a day, these 50 plus webinars will help you to remain licensed for the next year. For much more information, check out the website, the Foster Care Institute, or drjohndegarmofostercare.com. Find me on Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn, and there's my email address right there as well, drjohndegarmo@gmail.com. And please feel free to ask me questions about this webinar or other webinars or other questions you might have. Again, as you know from my TED Talk, I've devoted my entire life to helping those with foster care issues. Hey, I want to put a little plug in here for my brand new book, The Little Book of Foster Care Wisdom, 365 Days of Inspiration and Encouragement for Foster Care Families. When I traveled the United States the past few years, I kept hearing from foster parents just like you, Dr. John, we need a little book that gives us a little bit of inspiration and encouragement every day. And that's what this beautiful hardcover book is. And you can find this book and several other books at the Foster Care Institute, and we'll be happy to send you out a signed copy just to you. Hey, we want to thank the Fostering Circle for this opportunity. I want to thank you for being part of this special webinar today. But most importantly, I want to thank you because what you do, although you may not see it day to day, what you're doing is you're changing the life of a child in need. You are bringing hope, you're bringing healing, and you're bringing unconditional love to a child who perhaps may never have had it. So as a fellow foster and adoptive parent, I want to say thank you for all that you do. For the Foster Care Institute, I'm Dr. John DeGarmo. Cheers.